everyone, welcome to my channel. In today's video, I am super excited to share with all of you swatches and a look using the shades in the new Pat McGrath Sublime Smoke Mini Palette. So these are all existing shades from her Motherships, which I have all of, and so I do not have the mini with me, but I figured since I have all of these shades, it would be fun to put together a look using them. So in case you guys are interested, you can see what kinds of looks you could get from that palette. And for me too, I am interested in that because even though I do have these shades, these mini palettes have been a real hit from Pat McGrath. She released the first one about sometime last year, and I did a similar kind of video where I showed looks using the shades in that palette. And the palettes are pretty small and relatively affordable for Pat McGrath. So around $30 for 6 shades, which is kind of the best price per shade she has ever offered. And so if you're interested in having these shades in a very small format, then this is a really great product to check out. And so today I will be putting together some looks with that. So if you guys are interested in learning more about the Sublime Smoke palette, then just stick around. So let's start by swatching the shades, and I'll do this in order of how they appear in the palette. So the first shade is Skin Show Divine Glow. This is a champagne golden shimmer that comes in the Bronze Seduction palette. I should actually mention at the top, so basically if you want to recreate this palette at home, you need Bronze Seduction, Midnight Sun, and Divine Rose 1. Now, if you don't have these, but you have any other Pat McGrath palettes with bronzy shadows, honestly, you can probably recreate a very similar look, but if you want exact dupes, those are the palettes you'll be looking at. So the first shade is this one over here from the Bronze Seduction palette. This is a really lovely skin show shade. As you can see, it does have some of that golden glisten to it. Really, really pretty, great for any sort of warm toned looks. In general, her skin show shades are basically one of my favorite formulas for inner corner of brow bone highlight, for cheek highlight, or if you want just a very subtle glisten on your lids, it's really beautiful for that as well. So moving from left to right, top to bottom, the next shade is Taboo, which is a brown ochre matte. And you can find this shade from Midnight Sun. It's this one over here, kind of the mid-tone transition shade. This is a really nice versatile shade. So you can see in that swatch, I kind of built it up, but as you'll see in today's demo, sheared out, this is a really lovely, very natural transition shade. So the next shade is Bronze Eclipse, a bronzed taupe metallic. This one is also in the Midnight Sun palette over here. So this is a little bit more of a taupey bronze. You can see it's almost like the shimmer version of Taboo, and so these do go very well together if you want kind of that monochromatic look. So now moving to the second row, we have Extreme Dusk. This is also from Midnight Sun. This is a charcoal brown matte. So as you can tell, if you have Midnight Sun, you already have these 3 shades over here. Honestly, if you have Midnight Sun, I'm pretty sure you can do a very similar look because this Skin Show shade is not that dissimilar from the other Skin Show shade. This has a bit more of a peachy undertone, whereas the one in this palette has more of a golden one, but on the whole, they're not going to be that different. I really love this charcoal matte. You can see that it gives you a lot of depth, but I found this is also really easy to shear out and just kind of builds up very gradually. So for such a dark smoky shade, it's actually really easy to use. So the next shade in this palette is back in Bronze Seduction. So here we have Bronze Blaze, a golden bronze metallic. So this is much warmer in comparison to the previous bronze shade. Has more orange gold in it, whereas the previous one had that taupiness. So I like that you have that kind of versatility in terms of whether you want more of a natural bronzy look or if you want something that's a little bit warmer. And then the last shade in this palette is Extreme Mahogany, a rich mahogany matte. This is in Divine Rose 1, so a much cooler toned palette. And this is a really gorgeous deep brown. So you can see this adds a little bit more coolness again. So I think it's really cool how she mixed and matched these shades so you have that level of versatility. Like if you wanted kind of a slightly cooler, more neutral look, I would say you could go in with this extreme mahogany, this extreme dusk, and then bronze eclipse. Whereas if you wanted something a little bit more warm, a little bit more yellow undertones, you could go in with these two shades plus this one over here. So it has really nice versatility in terms of undertones. So with these swatches out of the way, let me bring you guys closer for today's eye look. So as you guys can probably tell from the rest of my makeup, overall today I'm going for a sultry glam kind of old Hollywood look, which is why I wanted to use this palette. But I'm gonna actually first start out with trying to do a very natural, simple look, because one thing I'm curious about with this palette is if I took it for travel, could I use it for like very everyday looks in addition to much more sultry glam looks? So let's try that out. So regardless what kind of look I start out with, I think I'm gonna have to use Taboo, which is the lightest matte in this palette. And so I'm taking this on my Wayne Goss number 16 and just sweeping this lightly all over the crease area. So you can see how this is actually a really nice, fairly natural transition shade on my skin tone. I think this is a very, very versatile shade for all sorts of looks. And I love just how easy it is to blend out as well. And I did not end up picking up the previous mini because it didn't really seem like a color story I would use a lot when traveling. But based on all of the reviews I've seen, people have said the quality is basically the same as in the original Motherships, which is, in my book, really amazing considering how comparatively inexpensive the minis are, because it's like, you know, you get more than half the shades for like a quarter of the price. And of course, the pans are way smaller than in these Motherships, but I mean, if you're like me and you have a lot of eyeshadows and you never really hit pan, that's not really a concern. So I think it's great she's created these, especially for folks who just want to kind of dabble in Pat McGrath before spending a lot of money. It seems like a really great way to do so. All right, there we go. So very nice and easy. I think this is a really great shade to have with you when traveling because you really can use this for any sort of look you're doing. I'm also going to just take a Wayne Goss number 6 brush and bring a bit of this on the lower lash line as well. Just kind of lightly sweep this over here. Nice. Honestly, for a very minimalist look, this is kind of all you need. Sort of like that I have bronzer in my crease look, just a tiny bit of definition. To gradually build up the intensity though, I'm going to go into this extreme mahogany shade and start adding a little bit more depth. It's actually really interesting to me to use this shade in such a kind of bronzy, overall bit warmer toned look because I associate this so strongly with Divine Rose 1, which is overall a very cool toned mauvey palette. So it's kind of cool having this crossover. Sort of like a fanfic with some of your favorite characters in very different universes. And then similarly, gonna take a tiny bit of that on that Wayne Goss brush again and sweep this along the lower lash line. This Wayne Goss brush has been discontinued for a while, so I haven't actually used it in a video for a while, but it's a very soft, very nice brush. In general, I really miss Wayne Goss brushes. I feel like he's basically given up on his brush line, but they were really great quality. Alrighty, so for finishing off this kind of very casual look, I'm going to now just go into the Skin Show shade and just take a little bit of that sort of all over the lid on a finger, just lightly, because I'm going to cover this up later with the other shimmers because I definitely want to feature those in today's look. But I just want to see, you know, if I were just traveling and wanted something very easy and breezy, what kind of look would I get? All right, there we go. That's really nice, actually. Okay, I am enjoying this. So here is look 1. This is just your kind of easygoing day look, just using a few of the shades. Of course, you know, I would normally add eyeliner on top of this, but hopefully you guys can just kind of imagine how it might look. But of course, we are not stopping there, so let's amp up this look for the nighttime. So I'm going back into Taboo and deepening up the crease area. And now I'm going back into that mahogany shade because I want more depth, and I'm just gonna pack that on the outer portion of the lid. So I'm not going to sweep this much into the crease. So now let's get into the deepest matte, which is Extreme Dusk, back in to Midnight Sun, and I'm going to focus this a bit more closely to the lash line. You can see that if you build this up like I am right now, like, it looks pretty black actually, but it is a little bit more subtle than black. It's a little bit more sheer and also can, I think, blend in a little bit better into brown tones. So it's a very versatile shade. Great for any sort of smokiness, great for a liner look. Alrighty, let's see, how do we want to do these shimmers? So we have two beautiful shimmers. Do I want the cool tone on the inside or the outside? So I feel like this shade has a little bit more oomph to it, so I'm going to put this one as my center lid shade. So I'm going to spread this all over the middle of my lids. And this is a really beautiful creamy metallic shade. And then cleaning off my finger, I'm going into this shade and putting that Bronze Eclipse shade in the inner third. So there you can see them side by side. The Bronze Eclipse shade is just a little bit more kind of like a platinum bronze instead of a golden bronze. Ooh, very beautiful though. It's funny, I feel like it's been a while since I've done just like a very bronzy look, but now that summer is kind of on the horizon and I feel like we're seeing a lot more inspo pics with that bronzy tone, I'm remembering just how beautiful and flattering it is. It's just very, very glam. Alright, so now let's clean up the mattes over here. So first I'm just going to go back into the Extreme Dusk shade. And I will say, if you like this kind of look, even if you have the Motherships, if you anticipate bringing these all out, I would recommend just getting this mini, because I feel like the kind of musical chairs I've been doing with my palettes today has not been the most easygoing experience. So I don't really think realistically I would do this again in terms of putting together this look, in particular with these shades, unless I had them all together in one palette. Because it's just, you know, these are each pretty big and you're just kind of going back and forth, which is a little bit cumbersome. One downside with Pat McGrath Motherships is it is a little bit difficult to tell which one is which when they're on your desk. They all kind of look the same if you aren't looking at the bottoms of them. So I'm just going in with some more of that mahogany shade. Usually the way I like to do my mattes is basically lay down a gradient of them and then kind of go back again in sort of the reverse order just to reinforce those shades. Often with a smaller brush, so it's easier to be precise. And then taking off any excess and going back in with Taboo, kind of at the top. Bring this around the crease area again. Alrighty, I think that's a pretty nice wing. I will say kind of the mahogany shade and the dusk shade, when built up like this, kind of blend together a bit, but they're still really pretty. So now to deepen up the lower lash line, I'm going to first go back into Taboo on that Wayne Goss brush and just add a little bit more smoke down here. I like to be quite generous with this initial shade, so kind of all over my eye bag. Also helps deal with any creasing of your concealer under the eyes. And then again with a little bit of the mahogany shade, same brush. And then for some more precision, going in with my builder brush and Extreme Dusk, I'm just sweeping that on the outer thirds. And while I have that palette open, I'm going to take some of the Bronze Eclipse shade and put it in the inner thirds, mirroring what I did up top. And then Bronze Blaze for the center of the lower lash line. And for the final touch, I'm going in with my mini booster into the Skin Show Divine Glow, putting that on the inner corner. Adds a really pretty golden gleam. And then a little bit of that on the brow bone as well. Whew, look at that. Very pretty. Hindsight, I should have held off on highlighter on the cheeks because I should have put this as my highlighter, but that's okay. Have on my Wayne Goss highlighter today. And I will have all of the products linked below in case you guys are interested. Alrighty, so here we have the finished eyeshadow look. Really, really pretty, very glamorous in my book. So here we have the final eye look. What do you guys think? I feel like this is really, really pretty and was so easy to put together too. I'm really impressed. I mean, I'm always excited for any opportunity to break out my Pat McGrath palettes. They do have my favorite formulas, so it's pretty hard to beat. But this is just such a fun look, one that I haven't put together for a long time. I mean, I've never specifically put together these shades, but this type of look I haven't put together in a while, but it's really, really nice. So zooming you guys out, before we close out this video, I did want to do some comparison swatches with some of the other palettes that I frequently take when I'm traveling. So let's see how this palette compares. So first off, I have the Mini Nude palette from Natasha Denona. This is a very new palette to my collection, so I've only done 1 or 2 looks so far. Haven't actually had a chance to travel with it, but I am just very curious how it compares. So let's do some swatches. Okay, so that first shade looks quite similar to kind of a mix between these two metallics. Then I guess this is kind of the equivalent to the Taboo shade. Definitely a lot lighter. This is the equivalent to the Skin Show shade. A little bit more metallic and high impact, a little bit more icy as well. And then this shade is really gorgeous. This one has kind of a dual chromatic element to it, which the Pat McGrath doesn't. And then here is the deepest shade. So, all right. Here are the two palettes side by side. I would say the main difference between these two palettes is actually this charcoal shade. Like if you got rid of this shade, I feel like the two palettes basically give you more or less the same look. The other major difference is just that this shade is a dual chrome, so it's a bit more glimmery and interesting in comparison to these two. Also, Bronze Blaze is just a lot more orangey in comparison to the shades here. But on the whole, these are quite similar. So I would say if you already have Mini Nude, you don't necessarily need to run out and grab this palette unless you just really like the extra depth and smoke that Extreme Dusk provides. Next, we have this Pat McGrath Celestial Nirvana palette. I love bringing this for traveling because you basically can put together any look that you want. But when it comes to kind of a everyday look, I really like this quad over here. So let's swatch this. I mean, this already looks a lot more neutral and leaning almost cool toned in comparison to this palette. But let's see. So here is the Skin Show shade. Yes, definitely a bit more peachy and lighter in comparison to the one in this other palette. Then here is the lighter matte. It is also way more cool toned. And then here is the shimmer, almost more of a taupe shade. Yeah, definitely more taupey. And then here's the deepest shade. All right, wow. So yeah, as you can see, definitely this palette is a bit more monochromatic than these other two, and then a lot cooler in tone in comparison to either of these other two. In general, I would say this is more of a taupe, neutral brown color story instead of a bronze color story, which you get with the other two. And then finally, I have the Natasha Denona Glam Face palette. This is quite a different color story, but I just want to swatch these side by side just to see. This is one of my favorite palettes to travel with because the tones are just so beautiful for pretty much any sort of look that you want to do. Okay, in general, this palette is a lot lighter in comparison to this palette over here. Also, again, kind of similar to the holiday palette, it's a much more neutral color story. This also has that kind of peachy shade that adds a little bit of a pink element. So, okay, basically, it's kind of like my arm is divided in half. I would say these two palettes here are really great if you want more of a neutral, leaning cool toned color story, a bit lighter. And then up here is much more kind of that bronzy, warm toned color story. And then again, this shade definitely stands out in this whole bunch in terms of just being way deeper. So I think especially if you like using a deep shadow as a liner, that's one major advantage of this Pat McGrath Sublime Smoke palette. I guess that is the shade that provides the smoke, so that is quite fitting. So now that we have all these comparison swatches out of the way, let's get into my overall thoughts and impressions about this palette. So on the whole, I am quite impressed. I would say this is a really beautiful, quite versatile palette. Again, I liked the first look that was kind of the daytime, very easygoing look. I feel like that was really nice, really natural. You could wear that for any sort of occasion. And I really love this sultry evening look as well. It's just so beautiful, nice dimension, and you can really pair this with any sort of outfit, any sort of cheek or lip look. So I think that's really nice, especially for travel. If you don't want to be thinking a lot about how to put a look together, the fact that these bronze tones are just kind of neutral in a way. I mean, not neutral in terms of warmth, but neutral in the sense that they're sort of brown leaning. So regardless of what your clothing color is, it's going to be quite flattering. That's a really nice element of versatility. Now, in terms of whether I'm going to pick this up, I think I'm going to probably hold off for a little bit just because it is quite similar to Mini Nude, which I just picked up. And I mean, normally I do end up using eyeliner instead of eyeshadow as liner. And for the most part, when I'm traveling, I'm not doing this level of smoky eye. So I think it's fine for me to just have Mini Nude and not have this really deep shade. But if you don't have Mini Nude or you really want to have something that gives you that level of smoke, I think this palette is really amazing. And compared to her previous palette, I would say this one is definitely, it's less versatile in terms of the types of looks you can get. So in the last video I filmed with the shades from that other mini palette, I think it's called Midnight Voyage. For that one, I did multiple looks that were totally different because there was kind of a bronzy color story and a purple color story in that palette. Whereas this, you're gonna get bronze kind of regardless. But that said, I think this one is definitely more versatile in terms of going from very natural to very smoky, whereas the other one didn't necessarily have that versatility. So if I were to pick up one of the minis, it would definitely be this one. So that's it for today's video. If you guys like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. I would love to hear in the comments what you guys think about this look, this color story, and in general, these mini eyeshadow palettes that Pat McGrath has been coming out with. Are you interested in picking up any of these palettes? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you all so much for joining me today, and I'll catch you next time. Bye!